And we are back. Welcome back to another Premier League predictions video for the first time, I think, ever on a Thursday. Because yes, ladies and gentlemen, there is a Premier League game taking place this evening. Now, obviously, if you are a fantasy football fan, that means you need to get your fantasy football teams submitted before 6 p.m. this evening, before we have tonight's Premier League action between Crystal Palace and Brighton. So if that has jogged your memory into doing that, then please let me know by dropping a like on this video. And if you're new around here, please do subscribe to the channel as well. We're doing all sorts of predictions all the time on this channel, so make sure you're not missing out on any of those. Let's get into all of this weekend's action. And we start off with that aforementioned game between Crystal Palace and Brighton, taking place at Selhurst Park this evening. Now, both of these sides, again, the form is just so mixed that it's so hard to judge with these teams at the moment. You see good performances from both, but the results just aren't quite there at the moment. Obviously, this is a big derby game for both sides as well, which will certainly liven up the atmosphere. Like I say, it's a Thursday night game, something that I think favours Brighton, who of course plays Thursday night football every single week, being in the Europa League. So I really don't know where to put this. I was very tempted to go for a Brighton win, but I'm just not that confident in it, so I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. From Thursday night, we move swiftly on to Friday night, where there is yet another game, this time between Aston Villa and Sheffield United. Aston Villa, of course, off the back of what I believe now is 15 wins in a row at home, which is just an unbelievable achievement. Sheffield United, of course, with new man Chris Wilder in charge, off the back of a very good performance last weekend and picking up a win. So, as much as I would like to give Sheffield United a chance in this one, I just think, again, I mean, you got to think about it. It would be so the Premier League that this is the game where Aston Villa's streak goes. They beat Arsenal, they beat Man City, they beat every single other team at home and then don't win against Sheffield United. But I'm going to go for Aston Villa. They're just on such good form at the moment. I'm going to go for 2-0, though. I'm going to be respectful to the job that Chris Wilder has already done at Sheffield United. I don't think it's going to be an absolute hammering, but I am going to go for 2-0 to Aston Villa. Also on Friday night, and thinking about it, I probably should have put this fixture before the Aston Villa game, because time-wise this is actually taking place first. There is a game in Saudi Arabia taking place between Manchester City and Fluminense. I thought I'd cover it in this video because it is it's a Premier League team. It is the World Club Cup final, and let's be honest, I think we all expect Manchester City to win. Fluminense, of course, do have some well-known players, most notably, of course, Marcelo, the former Real Madrid and Brazil legend, and also the likes of Felipe Melo and Ganso for any of those old-school FIFA players out there. So I don't think it's going to be an absolute walkover for Manchester City, but it's a major final. We all expect Manchester City to turn up and win it, and I'm going to go for a 3-1 win to Manchester City, which will see them crowned as world champions. Back to the Premier League then, and on Saturday we kick off with a 12:30 game between West Ham United and Manchester United. West Ham off the back of an absolutely abysmal performance last night against Liverpool at Anfield. Manchester United off the back of a phenomenal defensive display at Anfield. So both sides off the back of games at Anfield, and quite literally the polar opposite of how to defend against Liverpool at Anfield. So West Ham will obviously be looking to a response after what happened last night. Manchester United will be looking to build on what happened at the weekend. I think Manchester United can definitely win this one. I just think it all comes down to the sort of attitude and the way that we approach it. I have to believe, I go on about it all the time. I have to back my team when I think they are going to do well. So I'm going to go for a 2-0 win to Manchester United. I think we're going to sit in deep again. I don't think we're going to go too hard at West Ham because we know the threats that they can pose. But I think against a defence that's nowhere near at the level of Liverpool's, we could pick off a few more chances and grab ourselves a couple of goals. On to the 3 o'clocks then, and we start off with Fulham and Burnley. Now, again, two sides that are on mixed form. Burnley have had a few better performances recently. Fulham have been absolutely phenomenal. And then, of course, the whole Raul Jimenez incident against Newcastle. They were able to bounce back last night, or should I say 2 nights ago, against Everton in the League Cup and get themselves a win on penalties. So with all those things considered, I think no one's going to be too surprised when I go for a 3-0 win to Fulham there. Next up, it is Luton Town taking on Newcastle. And once again, we have to ask the question, can Luton Town at Kenilworth Road get a result against one of the big teams? And unfortunately, once again, I think they're just going to come up short. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Newcastle. All the form suggests that Luton will dig in, they'll fight, they'll create chances. But ultimately, it's just not quite going to be enough. It's been the case against Liverpool, Arsenal and Man City and Tottenham earlier on in the season. I just think they've not quite got it yet. I'm hoping it's going to come good for them. It could come good for them this weekend against Newcastle. I just don't see it happening. Next up, it is Nottingham Forest taking on Bournemouth. And, well, new man, new no will be taking on AFC Bournemouth. And look, I mean, I'm not sure about this decision. I think the decision to sack Steve Cooper is an absolute disaster. I think he's the right man for Nottingham Forest. He's been given a squad by the owner who's just literally gone out there and bought anyone and everyone that he knows and likes and told Steve Cooper to make something out of it. I don't think that's good ownership. I think Steve Cooper is a very good manager. I'm not the biggest fan of Nuno, and I think it's just not going to end up going well for them. So with all of that said, I'm going to go for a 2-1 win for Bournemouth. I just think that's the way the game will pan out. Obviously, I should have mentioned it for the Luton game as well. Both Luton and Bournemouth are coming off the back of that horrendous incident involving Thomas Lockyer as well. So I think Bournemouth will feel like this is an opportunity to sort of make up for what wasn't a great performance again for them against Luton before the Lockyer incident. But we shall see. I still think Bournemouth come out on top in this one. I'm going to go for 2-1 to them. Next up, it is Tottenham taking on Everton. Two sides on very good form once again. Tottenham off the back of 2 consecutive wins after what had been a poor run. Finally, it looks like their form has come back. Everton, who are just playing some really good football at the moment. I think they were unlucky against Fulham in the Cup the other day and own goal going against them. And then obviously the penalty shootout is just a lottery at the end of the day. I think they could cause Tottenham some problems. But at the end of the day, I think Tottenham are just a little bit too good for Everton. So I am going to go for a 3-2 win to Spurs. I can see that one being highly entertaining. The main event of the weekend will take place at 5:30 on Saturday. It is Liverpool taking on Arsenal at Anfield. And I think you've got to look at this from the perspective of the weekend's game rather than what I've witnessed last night in the League Cup. Because like I say, West Ham were just, I genuinely think, that bad. I think Liverpool played well, don't get me wrong. And I think Curtis Jones has certainly earned himself a place in the starting lineup for the game at the weekend. But I just really don't think Liverpool are at it at the moment. I think West Ham made it far too easy for them last night. I think if you look at the performances against Sheffield United, Crystal Palace and Manchester United, I think you have to favour Arsenal in this one. The only thing that's working against Arsenal is that Arsenal always blow it at Anfield. No matter what happens, Arsenal always seem to blow it at Anfield. They should have won last year and they completely bottled it. This year, though, they have a man in midfield called Declan Rice who has really turned around those fortunes in that middle of the park. That is where the game is going to be won and lost this weekend. I just think Arsenal are going to edge it. I've got a little feeling on it. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Arsenal, which will see them retain their spot at the top of the table after Aston Villa would have gone top on Friday. Interestingly, if this game is a draw and Aston Villa do win on Friday, Aston Villa will be top of the Premier League for Christmas, which would be an incredible achievement for them. And then finally, the one game being played on Christmas Eve, which is very bizarre. I don't ever remember the game being played on Christmas Eve, certainly not in the last few years. It is Wolves taking on Chelsea, and Chelsea really with their backs against the wall at the moment. Yes, they did beat Newcastle in the League Cup. However, it was a 92nd minute equaliser after a horrendous mistake from Kieran Trippier, and then they won on penalties. By all intents and purposes, they should have lost that game. I just don't fancy them in front of goal. They're not a very good attacking side. Wolves, on the other hand, again, are very good going forward, but haven't been the best defensively recently. So I think there's going to be a lot of chances in this game, and I can't really split them. So even though I've said Chelsea don't score a lot, I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw, but it would not surprise me one bit to see Wolves come out as 2-1 winners. That is going to be it for all of my predictions for this week. If you don't watch my reaction to the West Ham Manchester United game on Saturday, have a very Merry Christmas, and obviously I will be back on Boxing Day morning for all of my predictions for the Boxing Day fixtures. Thank you very much for all of your support as always. I will see you very, very soon.